So while she's doing that, I want to talk about retirement. How many people want to retire one day? Right? How many people are ready to retire right now? You, okay. Hit these people up, okay? But I want to retire one day, too, one day. So I started thinking, well, how am I going to do it? I better figure it out if anybody. I'm in the, I sit on the board for the Retirement Industry Trust Association. I run a retirement-based company. I really should kind of figure it out, right? So if you don't, I just want to tell you some really basic thing that I kind of put together because it's easy. So when you're a real estate investor, what you want to do is have multiple streams of income, am I right? You're not going to rely on one thing. Same thing with retirement, you're going to have layers. So you're probably going to have like Social Security, if it's still there, the base, like what you paid into. And then maybe on top of that, you're going to have the 401k from where you worked or your employer plan. And maybe on top of that, you have an IRA or something that you've invested in personally. And on top of that, you could have like an annuity that's going to pay you a guaranteed amount every month. That's a different kind of a policy. Maybe you've got an annuity. And then maybe you've purchased some real estate. Now you've got real estate. So now you really see it's like a capital stack, isn't it? It's all these different streams of income that you're stacking up. So with all these streams, if something goes bad, you hope you're balanced enough that it's all going to work out, that you've got something, you probably have cash on hand and things like that. So self-directed IRA is one of the pieces to this puzzle. And it's great because not only is it how you can save for your personal retirement, but it's kind of a win-win because if you have a deal, I was talking to the guys out there, and they have deals, and so it's not only can you use it for your deals, but other people can invest in your deals. And that's why I call this tapping into a $40 trillion pool of funds for your deals. So it's for you, yes, but it's also how you can help other people build their retirement through your deals. All right, isn't that great? I mean, when it works well, everyone wins. It's the best. That's why I love it. It's an integrity thing, it's good. All right, so I'm assuming this works, and I'm just going to give it a shot. All right. Sweetheart, I'm pushing the up button. What did you push? The down button. Okay, called the down button. Hashtag down button. All right, so my background. I've done a lot of things in my life from my incredibly young age, but I've been a property manager. When I was in Seattle, a friend of mine was a property manager, and she would manage all these buildings all over the city. And she says, hey, I've got this little building in Seattle, 10 units. She says, why don't you move in, collect the rent checks, and you get half off your rent? I said, sounds great. So I started there, and then I got a bigger building and a bigger building and a bigger building, and did a lot of property management, like evicted people, all that fun stuff, and property management. So I did some of that. I was a realtor for a year, which is a job for someone else, okay? God bless them, man. It's special. Okay, then I got into mortgage loan servicing, which we used to call cleaning up after the elephant, because you've got the originators that are selling the deal, and now it's closed, and now you're servicing that loan that's already closed. So I did that for a number of years as I was the trailing spouse, having babies and all that. And then ultimately, I got into the self-directed IRA space and also became a real estate investor. And I've been I guess it's now 17 years, since 2007, it's 17 years that I've been in the self-directed IRA space. So, I've had real estate licenses in Washington, in Texas, and in California. I've had a life and health license here in California, SDIP, Self-Directed IRA Services Professional, and also CISP, Certified IRA Services Professional, and I'm on the board for RETA. So that's like, what are my credentials for talking to you? There you go. Plus, I'm the CEO and founder of UDirect IRA Services. But I also was a radio announcer. Yay! When I was a kid, I did Light Rock. Let's talk. K-Light 98.7 FM. Right? Yeah. Smooth Jazz 107.5. The Oasis. Little David Benoit right there. Okay, so that was my first career, though. And I thought that it's kind of fun, so I like to tell people about that. And I was 27 in that picture. Oh my gosh, now my daughter's that age. Okay, so I was telling you that the great thing about self-directed IRAs is that there is this gigantic pool of money that you can tap into for your deals. And it's not 40 trillion in IRAs, it's broken down into IRAs, 401ks, or employer plans, like a 457, 401k, something like that, or 403b. Then there's pensions, like a defined benefit plan is a pension. You could have different kinds of pensions. Also, annuities, and altogether, all these retirement savings vehicles total around 40 trillion for the United States. That number goes up and down depending on what day it is, but it's been that number for a couple of years. So quite a large pool. And I'll tell you what, self-directed IRAs, as we'll find out in a minute, have been around for just about 50 years, and it's still the best kept secret. So if you're raising capital, like if you want to write something down, just ask this question of your potential investor. Hey, do you have an IRA or do you have a 401k with a previous employer? Because if they say yes, they can invest in your deal. And they're like, I can't invest my IRA in your real estate deal. It's like, oh yeah, you can. And you don't have to explain the whole thing to them. You can send an email, like copy us on it, and we'll take it from there and hold their hand through the whole process. So it works pretty nicely. Okay. The problem that you solve. So retirement savings are super low. I mean, I know it's 40 trillion, but there are a lot of people. And most Americans don't have enough saved to retire. It's a little spooky, but because we have so many other demands on our lives that are immediate, like tires, or kids' education or something like that. So that is true. So basically, you can make your next project not just a home run for yourself, but also to help build someone else's retirement account. Like I say, it's like a win-win. So who has never heard about this? If you have never heard of a self-directed IRA, oh gosh, you're the advanced class. Okay, yay. All right, great. So a lot of people haven't, though, and the people you're talking to, the people you want to raise capital from, probably haven't heard about this. But again, Gerald Ford, when he was president, signed the ERISA laws into effect. And you're like, who? Most of the people in the room weren't even born when he was president. But yeah, so that's when it was created. And a lot of CPAs and attorneys don't know about this too. So now you do, and that's great. Now you can tell other people. So an IRA is an individual retirement arrangement. That's what it stands for. And the basic IRAs for individuals are traditional and a Roth, okay? And they're different kinds, but what are they going to invest in? Now, if you weren't here in this room, or if you didn't already know, people will have a retirement account at work and sort of have some idea that's invested in the stock market. Maybe mutual funds have some vague idea because most people are just busy doing their thing, right? But you've always been able, since day one that IRAs were created, you've always been able to invest in alternative assets, like private equity, like performing and non-performing debt. Your IRA can be the bank and lend money to someone. Raw land, precious metals, like the Delaware Depository that we work with, they call me a silver stacker because I live to buy the little stacks, silver coins, US minted silver coins. Other things like mobile home parks, multifamily, so many different kinds of real estate, shopping malls, commercial and residential real estate of all different types. And I think I kind of covered everything there. Raw land too. Isn't that great? Your IRA could buy raw land and then you could lease it to somebody, maybe to graze their cattle, or lease it to someone to put their windmill on. So your raw land could even turn a profit. Pretty sweet, right? Okay, so when the IRS created these things in 1975, it's so like crazy, the simplicity, the genius of their simplicity. They said, your IRA can invest in anything except life insurance contracts and collectibles, anything. So that's what the IRS says. Now, when you get to the custodian level, the custodian can decide what assets are and are not administratively feasible. For example, your IRA can technically invest in a racehorse because it's an asset, it's an investment, but they're kind of smelly to custody, right? So that's an asset class that we don't touch, for example. So what you want to do when you open an account is understand the asset that you're interested in first, and then make sure that the self-directed IRA company that you're interested in, it's probably going to be you direct, I have a feeling, but make sure that you ask if they'll custody that asset. All right, so the rules. Okay, let's talk about the rule book, because this is a tax-protected vehicle. Traditional IRAs and SEP IRAs and simple IRAs, the money goes in pre-tax. You make a contribution, you may get a tax deduction. Roth IRAs, the money goes in after you already paid the tax, but in both cases, all these retirement accounts, the proceeds grow untaxed. In the Roth IRA, they come out tax-free as long as you meet a couple conditions. And in the traditionals and the other pre-tax accounts, when the money comes out, you pay tax on it, and if you're under 59.5, you pay a penalty, okay? But once you hit 59.5, it's yours. You can take it out. You have to pay tax, but you're good, okay? So that covers a lot about what happens with IRAs, but prohibited transactions, that is something you must avoid. And the self-directed IRA game, to win the game, is to avoid these things. So what we do at UDirect is we offer a 20-minute free consultation. So if you've got a deal and you're not quite sure, hey, Kaaren, is this a prohibited transaction? We're going to talk to you and say, who are the principals in the deal? You know, what are you doing? What kind of a deal is it? Usually it's debt or equity. We start there. You know, is this a debt or equity deal? What does that look like? And so basically, it's disallowed for you to borrow money from the IRA. So with an IRA, you can take money for 60 days once in a 12-month period. But I mean, like a real loan, you can do that in a 401k, but not an IRA, all right? Selling property to it. You don't sell anything you personally own to your account because you are disallowed to your IRA. I'll explain more in a minute. So your IRA doesn't buy any assets you already personally own. You don't use it as security for a loan. Like, you know how when you fill out a mortgage application and they want all your assets? I mean, they may include it in your assets, but it's not collateral for the debt, okay? And you can use it to buy you don't use it to buy property for personal use. No personal use. You can use IRAs to buy non-owner occupied properties. And that's it. With renters, they pay the rent to the IRA, and it's a beautiful thing. So just a little bit about the rules. If you like rule books and you want to write stuff down, IRS.gov is the website. Publication 590 just breaks everything down if you just want to go super granular on that. Or call me if you forget, and we'll talk about it. Okay, keep away from prohibited transactions. Again, I've been doing this for a very long time. I've only seen maybe 5 real prohibited transactions in all that time. So it's not something that happens very often, mostly because we're going to talk to you. But prohibited transactions are you or any other disqualified person benefiting from the IRA. And those disqualified people, they're your ascendants and descendants, right? So your IRA isn't going to lend money to your kids to go to school because they're disallowed. Your IRA doesn't buy a house from like your parents because they're disallowed to your IRA. Your IRA doesn't invest in your own business because you're disallowed. You don't buy, sell, or exchange assets between the plan and the disallowed people. And disallowed people can't provide goods, services, or facilities to the plan. What that means is if you're an asset sponsor and you're raising money, you're not going to take your IRA and put it in your syndication because you're C-suite, you're a decision maker. That's a prohibited transaction. So staying away from prohibited transactions is the way to win. The great thing about a company like UDirect is that when you open Fund Invest, you open an account, get the money in it, and then you give us the docs, and we're looking at your investment docs. So we're going to take a look, and we're going to look, and if the name of the buyer and seller are the same, like as the account holder, that's a red flag. We're going to take a look at it. It's probably going to go through 3 filters before the deal is actually funded. So you've got other people that know what to look for looking. And if we see something, we're going to call it before you ever, pull the trigger and actually invest. And that's really helpful. Retirement can be a reward for savings and investing or punishment. So we want it to be a reward, and I know you all do. That's why you're here, on a Thursday night here in Pasadena, is because you're striving to have a great retirement and to do well for yourself. But, it's a reward for ourselves. So it used to be when I very first started UDirect IRA Services was 2009. And that was, of course, in the middle of the Great Recession. And so investors really found self-directed IRAs at that time. And the reason is because, remember we were at IndyMac back there? Yeah, we used to work at IndyMac together. Banks weren't lending in the Great Recession, right? Banks were closing. And even the banks that were lending, you know how you can usually get 10 rental properties, 10 properties all together, right? It was down to 6. So if you're a real estate investor and all of a sudden everything's going belly up and you can get good deals, you can only get loans on 6. How are you going to invest? And it's the light, turned on for everyone. I can borrow from this $1 trillion pool of money for my deals, right? And that's when self-directed IRAs really boomed. It's right when I opened the company. Great timing. So understand that there are other things you can do with an IRA. And when you go to buy real estate, your IRA can actually borrow money. Now, my background I mentioned is mortgage lending, like residential mortgage lending. This is a commercial loan, but I thought, really, a bank will lend money to an IRA account? And the answer is yes. It's a commercial loan called a non-recourse loan. It's to the IRA, not to you as an individual. So it's not about your FICO score. It's not about how much money you have in the bank personally. Really about the asset, like its location and condition, but mostly it's like what you can get for rent. And a lot of times these non-recourse lenders want you to have a lease agreement in place when you close the deal. But your IRA can borrow money, and that's cool. And if you want a list of non-recourse lenders for your deals, just email me info@udirect, and we'll send you the list, okay? Yay. Non-recourse lenders, yeah, not a lot to choose from. They're going to require more skin in the game on your deals, like 40 to 60% or more in the deal, as opposed to when we buy a house, we can buy a primary residence with 5% down, conventional, right? But in this case, they want a lot more equity in the deal to make the loan. However, when your IRA uses leverage, there is a tax, and you need to know that. When you invest in a syndication, and the syndication sponsor is taking on leverage in that deal, it puts off this tax called UDFI, Unrelated Debt Financed Income Tax. It's not the worst thing ever. There are ways to mitigate it. Your tax preparer will file a 990T. If you have UDFI that came to your IRA because you're in a syndication, you'll get a K1, and it'll kind of explain it to you. But if you are purchasing straight up real estate, borrowing money to buy it like a dwelling, then you just need to know that you need to pay this tax. It's not based on the total proceeds. It's only the percentage of proceeds that were leveraged. So if you get like 30% leverage, 30% of the proceeds, subject to that tax. And another place you can read about this one, it's again, IRS website, irs.gov, and it's publication 598 to go deep on the tax. But a lot of people say, well, hey, I'd really like to invest in real estate. I'd like to get started. I see this deal. How do I get into this deal? How do I make it work? We've already talked about other people's money and other people's retirement, using that. But also understand there's leverage too. So you don't have to have all the money personally. There are at least, right here, 2 different sources of capital so that you can grow your own personal wealth. All right. Now, when your IRA invests in a self-directed asset, an alternative asset that we call them, all the proceeds from that asset have to go back in the IRA that actually owns that asset. We've had people take their rent checks from their IRA, I know, right, from their IRA owned property and put it in their Charles Schwab account over here. No, not a very good idea. It has to go back in the IRA that owns the asset. And similarly, if there are expenses of the asset, they have to be paid for by the IRA. So what if your IRA is invested in a multifamily syndication? Very common, one of the most common deals out right now is investing in a syndication. Well, guess what? Debt has restructured, hasn't it? Interest rates have changed, and a lot of this mezzanine debt that's in these syndications, people have had to re-up their debt, and now they're having capital calls, and they're telling their investors, come to the table with more money to keep your same level of investment in this deal. So capital calls, that has to come from your IRA. If your IRA owns a house and you need like a water heater, your IRA pays for that. So understand, if you run out of money though, there are ways to do it. Like you could sell other assets, you could transfer or bring money in from other retirement accounts. You could contribute, and the amount you can contribute is based upon your age and your income and your account type. So different situations. So you can get money back in. So all expenses have to be paid for by the IRA. If you don't have enough money and you forget, like, what do I do? Just call me. But there are at least 6 ways to get money into your account legally so that you can, make up for the shortfall that may have happened. Okay. So how do you get a house in an IRA, right? Well, I think we all here know how to buy a house. So that's the hard part. And with an IRA, it's sort of like a cash deal. It's really not that difficult. The offer to purchase is going to say the name of the IRA on it is the buyer. And then we fund that deal, and now your IRA owns a house. I'm oversimplifying, but say the IRA owns a house, and again, the proceeds go back to the IRA. So that's pretty easy. But remember that so you'll fill out a direction letter. You give us the supporting documentation. You fill out a form telling us what you want. Like, I want this much money to go here. We wire the funds, closes, records on title, and now your IRA has self-directed. If it's real estate, it's a really good idea to have a property manager. How many people have property managers right now? I know Deborah does, right? For sure. Okay, okay, so you're all dialed in there. Property managers are a great thing because with an IRA, you want to keep it arm's length. So, because you're prohibited. So keep it arm's length, that's a great idea. And rents are made payable to the IRA. But what if you and someone else partnered on this deal, right? And it's, say, 2 IRAs partnering to buy this asset. Well, then the renter has to make 1 check to your IRA and 1 check to this person's IRA. So we all know it's hard enough to get a tenant to write 1 check, let alone 2, right? So again, they could write the check to the property manager. The property manager could keep any overflow, extra income that comes, that doesn't pay debt or whatever, and use that and hold that and use that for expenses. And if you've got a property manager, they're going to fix things and keep you away from committing a prohibited transaction. So a property manager can be a really good deal in a real estate transaction. So here's an exception to this example about disallowed people. I mentioned ascendants and descendants, right? So here's a father and a son. So dad has cash, and the son has a traditional IRA. So they're going to go in this property together, and it's okay, right? So we'll talk about how that works. So as long as neither one of them had any personal ownership interest in that property before the deal, it's okay. And it's because they don't have that ownership interest, and because they close concurrently, their names record on title at the same time, that's like a loophole. And you can do that with any disallowed person. You and your spouse could invest together. Your brother, just like you and your dad, you and your kids could invest together in this way. So understand that it's after that deal closes, that's when the disqualified person rule comes into effect. So in this case, the dad and the son, they're never going to stay in the property. They're never going to buy each other out. They're never going to stay there, and none of their ascendants or descendants will ever stay there or have any use of the property. But that's great. Then they've got a cash flowing asset now, hopefully. Assuming. But now, of course, there's 2 parties in that deal, right? So either they've got a property manager where the tenant can write 1 check right to the property manager, or those tenants are going to be writing 2 checks to dad and to son's IRA. So the proceeds and the expenses are split pro rata. In this case, it's 50-50, could be whatever it is. But any expenses like a property tax bill, 50-50, 50% dad's cash, 50% son's IRA. Same thing with the rent check, comes back in pro rata. So that's pretty important. All right, so that is the exception to the rule where you can invest concurrently with a disallowed person, okay? But now let's talk about this thing. It's informally called a checkbook IRA. But what it really is, a better term for it is an IRA-owned LLC. So you've got this IRA, right? And then your IRA creates a special purpose LLC. So it's like the IRA is the umbrella, and the LLC is owned by the IRA. So what happens is you've got the IRA open and funded. A third party creates this LLC. And why a third party, do you think? Yes. A third party creates the LLC, so the IRA buys 100% of the initial units of that LLC. So now the IRA has an asset, but the money goes from the IRA into the LLC's checking account. And now you, as an IRA holder, are the trustee, you're the managing member of the plan, and you can write checks for whatever. You can go to auction. Your IRA can buy maybe tax liens, which are super transaction intensive if you have a lot of little ones. You don't have to do this. You can. It's an option. I do promise you, though, does anybody have an IRA-owned LLC now? They're pretty common. All right. We did, as a country, just give $80 billion to the IRS so they could hire more auditors. So this will be the low-hanging fruit, I promise you. So if you're going to do this, it's fine. You can do it. It's legal. It's fine. But just make sure that you're keeping super clean books. You only use the money for 2 things. One is to acquire an asset, and the other is to pay an expense of the asset that the LLC owns, nothing else. You don't go buy beers for the crew, just 1 or 2, that's it. Okay, so we talked about different kinds of plans we started to, but there's a traditional, a Roth, a SEP, a simple, and inherited. He was telling me about an inherited account he has. And qualified plans like 401k, 403b, 457, and there are other plans. UDirect offers the health, savings plan, the HSA, as a self-directable vehicle. So traditional and Roths, they're IRAs, they're for individuals. A SEP and a Simple are for employers. A SEP is a simplified employee pension. A Simple isn't simple because the government calls it simple, right? It's a savings incentive match plan for employers. And Simples have kind of gone away. We have very, very few of them because when the SEP came out, it's just so much better than the Simple that people don't really open Simple accounts anymore. Inherited is every time you open an IRA, you name beneficiaries. And when you pass, your beneficiaries get your IRA. It doesn't go through probate. It's kind of like a trust, a little bit like that. So when you die, it's not going to go through probate. Just what you have in that IRA is going to go straight to your beneficiaries as an inherited account, or a beneficiary account, inherited account. It's called a few different things. And there are a lot of stinking rules on this thing. So every 3 years I have to take this continuing ed class. We spend, I'm no kidding, 16 hours, 2 days on the inherited IRAs, and then they changed everything, okay? So if you get an inherited IRA, we'll talk, because you've got to make a decision up front. They've changed it to where you used to be able to, it was much more lenient, and they made the rules much more strict and the timelines tighter because they want that tax money, the government does. So you've got, so there you go. And you have to take RMDs based on the deceased's age as well. Okay. All right. So what if you say, well, this sounds great. I've been thinking about some deals. I'd really like to take my money and my retirement money and plug it into some of these deals I've been hearing about, maybe deals you were talking about tonight. How do I do this if I'm still working for a company who has this employer plan? Well, the truth of it is you really have to wait till you leave that employer, or they won't let you move the money. But with a 401k, you might be able to get something called an in-service transfer. There are certain conditions when you could get it. So you can just ask, call your plan administrator, hey, does the plan document have, an in-service transfer provision? They say yes, great. You can transfer it and roll it over, and then you can invest. Now that's the same thing for your investors as well. So what about losses? So sometimes deals don't go the way you hope, and sometimes IRAs can lose money. And this is a great time to talk about due diligence. Everybody got their due diligence hats on. I mean, due diligence is intense. Like I keep mentioning Rita, so every time we have a conference, I always say, hey, Kaaren, will you lead the fraud panel? Because I love being like a crime fighter, And we have caught fraudsters at our little company and put them behind bars. I mean, the law enforcement people did it, but we found the fraud. And it happens all the time. So a couple of years ago at a Rita event, I brought in this guy, and he calls himself James the Fraud Guy. So this guy was in Chicago on the, commodities board, right? And he was making money as like a young trader, and he had all of his parents' friends' money. Well, then things started not to go really well. And then he started kind of like fudging the books to make it look good because he was too embarrassed to be shamed or shame his parents that he wasn't doing well. And you just never want to cross that line because it's hard to uncross that line. So after 8 years, he had enough. He really couldn't live with himself anymore. So he prints out all of his stuff, takes it to the SEC, like, okay, put me in jail. This is what I did. Here's all the proof. And he served time in literally Joliet, like the Blues Brothers. And he served time, but now he's like the fraud guy. And he was telling us that one of the way fraudsters do it, like it could be like Deborah and I and also Christina know somebody who was a fraudster a long time ago in like real estate investment community, I would say. Yeah, who stole money. So these things happen. So how do you avoid it? You can do due diligence, and that's great, but understand there's really no such thing as a passive investment. Always check your IRA account. Did the proceeds come in as they were supposed to? Make sure you know where those files are so you can look up and say, what were those terms? They said they were going to record this note that I made. Did they record it? And you don't just ask them. You check with the county and see if it got recorded, right? So you always, always, always do your homework. And again, like log in your account, make sure that the payments came in as expected. So again, a passive investment, it just means that you're not out there, deal structuring, negotiating, dealing with the contractors. But it's never passive because as long as you care about that money, you need to be babysitting it. It doesn't take a lot, if you just have a little discipline and mark your calendar and this day you're going to do this stuff. That's what we do as grown-ups, right? So do that, because if your IRA loses money, which some of you may have realized during the Great Recession, you don't get to write that off. It's not a write-off, just a loss. Super hard to put the money back in because you've got contribution caps. So I'm just telling you, a couple of fun stories, but just to help you understand how incredibly important due diligence is, right? And to really understand your deal and understand the market. Like if you're going to invest in a private, like maybe some multifamily properties in, say, Tennessee, well, go see them, or understand the market. Like what neighborhood is it? Like what kinds of businesses support that area? What are the jobs that support the people that are paying the rent that are paying you your proceeds, right? Really delve in. It's kind of fun. It's like being a detective. So there you go. Do your due diligence for sure. All right. Self-directing. 1, 2, 3. Open an account. Fund it by moving the money in either by IRA transfer or a rollover. And then invest by giving us the documentation vested in the name of the IRA and the directions telling us, hey, wire it or send a check or to what address and how much. And then boom, you've self-directed. 100% of the proceeds that are owed to the IRA go back to the IRA, and any expenses of the IRA are paid for by the IRA. So when you put it like that, it's really not that difficult. It's pretty easy. And there you go. So that is me after 3 hours of hair and makeup. I thought you'd like to see. So there's the QR code. And there you go. So what questions do you guys have about IRAs or the ones that you have? Yes?
Okay, so I don't have I actually had a retirement account. Then I bought a house, I cashed it in, bought a house. But I would like to invest with my retirement, like buy it as an investment, retirement property. So would I have to then just like accumulate, like, because you can only invest put a certain amount in your Roth.
Yeah.
Or could I do like a backdoor Roth and then get like 60,000 and then because 5,500 is not enough to put a down payment on it.
Well, if you want your retirement account to own property, then obviously you have to have the capital to acquire that. So that's true. Roths do have caps, and you could make too much money to even be able to contribute to a Roth. So yes, if you have pre-tax money, you can convert it to Roth, and that's called the backdoor IRA, the backdoor Roth. It's where you take, maybe you contribute to a SEP IRA, and if you're self-employed. By the way, the SEPs are just amazing. The contribution limit to a SEP, it was $61,000, and then in 2023 it went to $66,000, and now it's $69,000 a year, the cap. It's the lesser of 25% of your income up to, in 2024, $69,000. And what if you and your spouse both own the business? Then you could both, put in nearly $140K into a SEP IRA. Isn't that great? And then that could be possibly tax deductible to you. And then you can save and then invest tax-free or tax-deferred. But so that's what you need to do. Yes, you need to build a retirement account. So you've got the money in there, so it can really work. And then you can execute on a deal.
And then so I would buy that property with an LLC, but it can't be me that opens the LLC.
Right, so you don't have to use an LLC. An LLC is just a tool that the self-directed IRA can use. You don't have to have one. You can. It's an option. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. All right. Yes?
Is it that the bank can actually lend to the IRA?
Yes.
So that your IRA can buy a house? What are the requirements that the bank look for since they're no longer looking for your credit?
Right. So she says, didn't you just say that that a bank will lend money to an IRA? And what are the requirements? So the requirements are they're going to look at the deal. They want to look at the property, and it'll be appraised. But they really want to see what the cash flow is on that property and how likely are they to get paid back. So those are their underwriting criteria, not your personal ability to pay the loan back from your personal income, but the property's ability to pay the loan back based on the market performance. So that's what they're going to underwrite the market. And they want you to have a lease agreement in place typically before they close. So you already have a tenant ready to go. Okay, yes?
So if I use the funds from the IRA and acquire a property, how do you report annually on the value?
Oh, wow. Like, super great question. She says, it's, okay, so she says if I buy a property in my IRA, how do I report on the value? Every year, what we're going to do is ask you for the value of the property, for you to tell us the value. If you own stock, all you have to do is pull up your cell phone, you see how much it is. Even precious metals, you know what the spot price is. But something like real estate, you need to tell us the value. So we'll send you a request for evaluation. And it can be sort of an informal thing, like on an annual basis. But anytime it's a taxable event, like a Roth conversion, or you're going to take a withdrawal, something you would get taxed on, then it has to be appraised, like formally appraised, that kind of evaluation. Okay, that's the answer. Yes?
So if I have like a IRA, I can transfer to self-directed IRA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I have a 401k from previous employee, I can put it to the same umbrella? Or?
Yes. Yeah, you can put multiple different retirement accounts in the same self-directed account.
So I have to open the self-directed account first?
Yes. Open the self-directed IRA account so there's a place for that money to go.
And what happened the difference, the SEP? Because I'm a self-employed also.
Okay. I love
I
the
have
SEP.
IRA and then SEP.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do?
Well, I mean, a SEP is great because if you're self-employed, you've got that high contribution limit. So you can self-direct a SEP. And a SEP and a traditional IRA are really kind of the same thing. So I would say, a SEP is a SEP. I would go with that.
I cannot have both, right?
Well, they almost are like both. So I know it's confusing, but yes, you can have both. You can have an unlimited number of retirement accounts. It's the only thing that's capped is the contribution limit. So yeah, yes.
Similar to her question, how would you work with the depreciation schedule on real estate?
Oh, ready for your mind to be blown? He wants to know how you work with the depreciation schedule in an IRA. The answer is you don't, because there's no tax. Right? Depreciate what? There's no tax. Yeah, exactly. I know. It'll take a quick minute, but yeah, there's no tax. Like you don't do a cost seg on an IRA on property, for example. Yeah. Yes.
I have old 401k money in a rollover IRA, like Fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I'm understanding it is basically those funds can, in a sense, be transferred.
Yes.
And then I could,
I'd be happy to. So this gentleman has money in, used to be an employer plan. He rolled it over into an IRA, and so he's asking you the question about these funds. Yes, you can self-direct that money, yes. Yeah, that's how it, yeah, literally exactly how it goes. Yes. Okay, yes.
One of the things that LLC protects you from when you have rental property is lawsuits. Somebody falls down your stairs and
Yeah.
can't get to your assets,
Mhm.
but they can get to the LLC's assets.
Mhm.
In this case, the property being owned by the IRA,
Yes.
what happens in that case?
Right. Well, I don't give legal advice, so that said, I'll tell you the answer. So when the IRA owns a special purpose LLC, okay, that LLC is an LLC. So if somebody slipped and fell and sued you and wanted to come after that asset, they could have a judgment against you or against your IRA, but they couldn't, until you took distributions, they couldn't come against that asset. So it may give you some asset protection, but that's a conversation to have with the attorney that creates your LLC. Just since I don't give legal advice. Yes.
Is there any way to go around contributing more money into your Roth?
She wants to know, is there any way to go go through the back door, something tricky to put more money in a Roth? And the answer is the backdoor IRA. It's called a conversion, a Roth conversion, converting a pre-tax account into Roth. Now, when you do that, the amount that you convert is taxable to you. So if you have like a SEP IRA pre-tax account that has like $100,000 and you want to move that $100,000 into Roth, you can do that. You can convert, but you're going to get a 1099 for the amount you converted and you'll pay tax. So a lot of people will like to do conversions to Roth in years when they've had a loss or really low income, be strategic about it. But you can convert pre-tax money into Roth dollars. And that's the backdoor Roth again. Yes?
How long does it take to set up a self-directed IRA? And then after
Yeah.
it's all set up and the money's in the account, how long until you can get funds out?
Right, okay, so we've made it really fast. So on our website, you'll see that there's a big gold badge that says open an account. We used to be PDF, now it's digital. Yay, it's so cool. So you just fill out a few forms and it'll describe who your IRA is with, the account number and so forth. So by the time you finished opening the account, it'll take you maybe 10 minutes to fill out the form at the most. You've told us who your custodian is, what your account number is, how much you wish to move, because you can do a complete or partial transfer, right? And then the whole thing is open and you're already funding the account. You're already working toward funding it by the time you're done with that process. And then what you're doing is lining up your investment docs. But we're going to reach out to you. Our transaction coordinator will reach out to you and say, hey, congrats, you've got a new IRA. I'm your contact. What are you looking to do? And okay, you want to buy property. Here's how you do that. Or you want to invest in precious metals. Here's how you do that. So we'll talk to you about what it is that you want to do and how to make that happen. The fastest in our industry that anything has happened between opening an account and getting a deal funded is 4 days. Why do you think it takes 4 days? Yeah, because we're waiting for the money, right? We're waiting for the money to come from a third party. So that's the real trick. But we move real fast. Yes?
Just to add to another question to what he asked, is that it seems from what I've been told it's dependent upon where the money's coming from, how fast they're operating.
It does, yes.
They say 10,
Yeah.
14 days. Is that pretty common?
It can be. I mean, during COVID, it was really slow like that. But a lot of the big brokerage houses, they just get so many of these requests, they just move them. Pardon me? Pershing, no, that's one of the biggest, and they're fast. They move fast. I think the kind of institution that'll take the longest is a 401k, because you don't transfer. It's not like filling out our form. It's you go to your plan administrator and you fill out their docs, and they're going to take their time. Then they're going to issue a check, and then they're going to put it in the snail mail. So by the time it's going to take a hot minute to get that money over. Okay? Yes.
Starting this year, that any unused 529 funds up to I think it was 35 can be open.
That was one of Christine's bonus questions for me. Yes. Starting in 2024, if anybody have kids in college? Yeah? Yay. Okay, with a 529 plan. And if they don't use all that money, just know this. Starting in 2024, yes, you can take a 529 plan, which is a state-based plan, not a federal plan, but each state has its own rules. And you can convert those $529, like you say, exactly right, up to a cap of $35,000 and move that 529 money into a Roth for that same child. Isn't that great? That is huge. That is a brand new thing for this year. Yes?
Can you invest the money into
So you're asking, can you invest the money, your IRA, in a syndication or a Delaware statutory trust, or what was the other? A REIT? Yes, absolutely. All excellent vehicles for a self-directed IRA. Perfect vehicles for that, yes. Yeah. Yes?
Would a health savings account could also be moved to self-directed?
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay. So an HSA is a pretty cool thing. So when you've got Roth money, you've already paid tax on the money, and then the money goes in the Roth, and then any proceeds that are gained are never, ever taxed, as long as you've had a Roth for 5 years and you're 59 and a half. Those are the two conditions, right, that you need to meet. So now you've got tax-free money. So an HSA is similar, except it's better. It's even better. An HSA, the money goes in, and you get a tax break for putting the money in. You don't get a tax break for putting the money in a Roth, all right? So you get a bonus there. The money grows inside. Whatever you invested in is going to grow tax-free. And then at the end of the deal, what you do is you take any medical bills that you may have and offset that with a withdrawal. Like, oh, I just had a tonsillectomy, and it was 20 grand, and I have a medical bill, so that like to the IRS, that's my proof. I can take out 20 grand from my HSA tax-free to cover my medical bills. Love it? So it goes in with a tax break, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. And there's two different contributions. One is for an individual, and the other one is for a family. And those go up every year. So yeah, if you use it right, you can self-direct it. If you don't have, like, if you have toddlers, and every time they have a runny nose, you're running them to the doctor, and you use your HSA for all those bills, probably not good to use an HSA as an investment vehicle, because you're going to need it to really pay the medical bills, right? So just think of that before you do it. Yes?
I would assume that TSP for government,
Yeah.
it works the same way as a 401k would do.
Precisely right, yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yes?
If I buy a note and
Yes.
And what's gonna happen? How's that?
Okay.
How's that process?
So sure, I'll be happy to repeat. She says, what if she buys a note and it turns out to be non-performing? The first thing, if it was my note in my IRA, the first thing I would probably do is use my IRA funds to hire a loan servicer. Probably already have a loan servicer, do the payments, but hire somebody to go after that person and try to collect, so make some effort to collect that debt. But if it's a straight up bad asset and straight up toxic asset, then it's just, literally nothing happens. If you can't collect that money, you don't get to write it off. You just simply lost the money.
How do you report to IRS?
You don't. You don't report it to the IRS.
At all? You as the broker.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good point. So what happens if you have a toxic asset in your IRA? It's worth a zero value. This is what I love. Every November we send out the letters, tell us your value. They go, oh, just write it off. It's a zero. Well, actually, Christina said we're fiduciaries. We're literally not a fiduciary in the sense of being advisory. And that's the Department of Labor just came out with a really big ruling on that. So that's a good thing. But we, as not fiduciaries, we can't say what an asset is worth because then we're giving an opinion of value, right? So you have to actually go out and get a third party to tell you that you lost money. Yeah. Well, we have valuators that we'll recommend to you. Some valuators charge a lot, but we have this one company we really like in Hawaii, they'll charge like $500 for a valuation. And your IRA would pay for that. And then we could write the asset down to zero. And then we report the zero value to the IRS. That's how.
You don't do anything reporting 1099 to the person who I loan the money to or anything?
No, we would not issue a 1099 to the person that didn't pay your debt. No, we wouldn't do that. But what we would do is send a 5498 to the IRS with the account value. Are you a CPA? You're asking good questions. Yes? Oh, okay. All right. I can spot that CPA. All right. Anything else? I'd love to. Cindy.
Are 401k sub-PINs or the Roth IRAs, are they protected against any kind of Chapter 13 bankruptcy?
No, they're not. So yeah, that's a good question. So what is the asset protection of a retirement account? When you have an ERISA plan, that's an employer plan, or a pension or something like that, that has ERISA protection. It's really called an anti-alienation provision. So remember long ago when O.J. Simpson, thank you, when he was convicted of a felony, what did he do? He moved to Florida, which is a homestead state, and they couldn't take his asset because it was homestead protected, right? And he lived off of his NFL pension because that had an anti-alienation provision. Now in California, IRAs don't have that kind of protection. But you could make a claim that if you had the money in an employer plan, you moved it into an IRA, it was originally ERISA money, you may be able to make a claim to say, well, wait a minute, that was ERISA money, it just moved in, moved over here are the receipts. So you might be able to make that argument. But in California, typically IRAs don't have any ERISA protection and that kind of protection from creditors. 2 more questions. Okay, who hasn't asked one? All right, so just go ahead.
If I want to use the IRA to fund first trust deed,
Yes.
and let's say I'm only going to I can only afford 50% of that total.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any circumstances where I could, I guess commingle is the word, is there any circumstance where I could do that, or would I simply, in that case, have to partner with somebody else who can fund the other 50%?
All right, great question. What he's saying is he has an IRA and he wants to in a hypothetical first trust deed, but he only really has enough in his IRA to really take down half of that first trust deed. So can he commingle? Can he partner with himself, or does he have to get a partner to do that deal? That's a really great question, and it's come up a lot for me personally lately. Do not invest with your IRA. There are companies that will tell you can do it, but guess what? When you're self-directing, you are self-directing, okay? They're not directing your money, and if you get caught by the IRS, they're not going to come out after the custodian. You made the decision, right? Never, ever, ever commingle your IRA money with your personal money. There is one exception. It's DOL 2000-10, Department of Labor 2000-10, that had some specifications of how you could do that. But if you got audited, and I've been audited, if you've been audited, you know how fun that is. They don't really understand every single little page of the Internal Revenue Code, God bless them. So, I mean, no, who could, right? They don't, the guy who, okay, CPAs. But so the guy who audited me didn't know what a self-directed IRA, I need more water, what a self-directed IRA was, you know, so I had to explain it to him, okay? So let me finish my point. I had a drink there. So what you have to be able to prove to the IRS so that you don't get hit with a prohibited transaction is that you didn't receive any personal benefit from that asset. So if you and your IRA commingled and invested together, how can you say if there were proceeds in that deal that you didn't have personal benefit? Because you did. You know, I literally talked to someone who works at another company, which will go nameless, and I said, you guys do this. Why do you do this? It's like, well, it's the account holder. If they're going to self-direct, they can do it. It's like, really, you'd let them be in harm's way? You'd really let them do that? And they're like, sure. And they would literally tell you you can do it. I'm going to tell you, don't do it. I wouldn't do it. But I'm also going to tell you you're grown up, so do what you want to do, you know? Because in order to find that you have a prohibited transaction, you've got to be audited. Anybody been audited besides me? Yeah, barely, no, like 5 of us, okay? So not the majority of us. So first you have to get audited. It's tough to really pick out a prohibited transaction. So you're kind of like gambling. You know, you're in Vegas if you want to do that. You know, don't tell me about it. Don't put it through you direct. But don't commingle with your IRA.
Okay, so you're advocating as long as you don't commingle, take on the other part.
Yes.
Do the 50%, and you would recommend going through with something like that.
Yeah, so if your IRA didn't have enough to take down a deal, you can absolutely partner with somebody else, absolutely. But thanks for giving me the opportunity to say, don't co-invest with yourself, even if somebody from another self-directed IRA company tells you you can. And I'll be happy to elaborate further, you know, offline if need be. Okay, like why not? So guys, thank you so much for staying awake and for inviting me here tonight. I really appreciate it. I think, you know, we all want to be wealthy, and this is one path to it. So thanks a lot.